I think for the last 1.5 years, when we all in the world, and especially in our region, especially we in the Baltics and in Latvia, have been watching Russia's full attack on Ukraine and helping as much as possible. There has been the question in my area of work, which has for many years been anti-corruption. And also I worked in Ukraine before the full-scale invasion on corruption. And there is, it was one of the issues at the top of the agenda of the government, and they really needed to deal with it, both for the security purposes and for their country. And now the question was, okay, now the war, during the war, should corruption be investigated? During the war, country need to be united, that doesn't show to the outside the weaknesses. And the Ukrainian answer, both at the media and NGO level, and also then later as a government response, was it is as important as during the time when there's no war. And I think I agree with that approach. And during the times I was in the parliament for 4 years, also working for the Foreign Relations Committee, representing the Parliament of Latvia outside of Latvia as a Deputy Secretary of the Parliament. And I found myself very often talking about importance of Ukraine's, supporting Ukraine, but Ukraine's, ability to defend themselves really depend on being able to trust their own structures. And then this is where we get into corruption, why it is not excusable that the system is misused, because it can be dangerous, it is costly, and it is eroding trust, because even if it does not go out in the public, many people see it, many people are involved, and they are discouraged, especially during times of war and conflict, that something is not there. Of course, it is very tempting to say that we will fix this and will not allow the theft to happen, and we will punish those who did it at any cost, and maybe cutting the corners on the way how we do it. But my 25 years experience in this area has shown that if you choose the means that are not adherent to the rule of law and the way and honest means, you will not prevail, you will not be able to fight corruption with this. Maybe short term, yes, you can put few guys in prison if you have power and you can attack it, but otherwise it is not possible. So I, working in Ukraine and working in Latvia before that, and all this time, it is clear that even if it is slower, democracy is always slower than authoritarian regimes that have a chain of command, and you can order. In democracy there are conflicting factions, they often use corruption as an attack on each other. Half or part of these things are very often only partly true and maybe not true. So there's a lot of disillusionment, and people in the end say, whom can we trust? So maybe we need the chain of command, and we don't want to be involved and let them deal with it. But my experience shows that you really need accountability. To fight corruption, you need accountability. Where in society can you get accountability? Within the closed systems, it's not a real accountability. Sooner or later, every dictator, or let's say autocrat, gets more and more isolated and is not getting any information and no criticism, not even talking about, and then more and more corners, could be cut, even if the intentions in the beginning were good. The very basic and very first definition of corruption in many years ago was around the monopoly and the way how you can Robert Klitgaard was the author of this. So, and the way you counter it, it is with accountability, with the control and public measures. So free media, strong NGOs, and powers of court, you know, the government powers or the public institution powers, the auditor general, anyone who can look from the outside and intervene and have the checks and balances of each other. So these systems need to be in place for the country to be able to fight and resist intrusion into their systems in times of instability. I think, you know, since we are talking here in Georgia, I think that you know, the burning heart and temperament helps. It has been very encouraging for us in Latvia to watch the most recent protests. One that lasted for many days was, in a way, technically insignificant piece of legislation around the NGOs and how government would accredit them. You know, if you told that to a lawyer robot, they would say, oh, it's a very small thing. But people can see the bigger implications. They know where such examples of legislation come from. They come from Russia that wants to crack down on the NGOs. So solid base provided by the government of media freedom and NGO freedom is very important, because people will respond and come on the street, but ordinary people can do it at some point, at some time, and you need people who understand what is happening, who tell the people, this is the piece of legislation we need to go out for. And they need to organize it, and people go out when they know that there was someone who will carry their issue, they carry that energy and go further with this. Ultimately, the citizen power should be very much in one system with political power. And change of political power and, you know, people, if you are not satisfied, and someone else coming in and doing the governance, however, you know, good or bad it is. Latvia and Georgia are, you know, have been working on their own countries and governments for the last 30 plus years. And that is, we have done a lot, built a lot, and still so much more remains to be done. So I think one of the very key points is education, is experience of young people to have a say in the environment they are in, starting with the school. I don't know how it is in Georgia, but in Latvia, a big attention at the moment is to pupils' councils in the schools and what they do. And now we have a law that says that each school should have a pupils' council. Then the question is what they are allowed to do. Usually they are allowed to do the Christmas party and the fundraising, which is, you know, a good thing, but that is not enough. They should be involved in running of the school, in you know, complaining about the test results and whatever school work is. And from school, they should be able to interact and see how their initiatives influence the local municipalities. And once you believe on that very small scale that your voice matters, this is where you start to pay attention, because we will never get better politicians if we don't get better voters. So that is one of the very key things. And that is it will not give results tomorrow, but it can give results the day after tomorrow. And this is how we build it, because the question of young people and old people disengaging from democracy is very important all over the world in different circumstances. But governance becomes more complicated, people don't understand. Everyone now sits in their own social media, they have their own bubble, and then there are so many more truths you know, how people view the world. So getting on the scale of one country and people feeling responsibility and having the practice of having that responsibility to care for their country is, I think, that road towards it.